Hey guys, what's up? It's Eric with Advanced Level Automotive. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be telling you guys a story about something that happened to me a few days ago. Now, initially I wasn't planning on making a video about this, but the more and more I thought about it, the more I realized that this is a pretty relevant topic, or at least it should be a pretty relevant topic in our industry. And I wanted to make this video to address that, especially for the guys who are looking to get into this industry, the guys that are already in this industry, the guys who have been doing this forever. You'll know what I'm talking about. Anyways, today's subject is going to be about safety and injury. Now, it's no secret that injury is a big part of our industry. It happens a lot. There's a lot of different ways it can happen. It just comes with the territory. Ask any mechanic who's been doing this long enough, and they'll probably have a gory story for you about how they cut their hand open, or how they busted their knuckles, or how they saw someone else in the shop get injured, a coworker, another mechanic. You know, there's all kinds of horrendous injury stories, plenty to go around, and believe me, I have my fair share. Now, even though our industry is plagued with injuries, there's actually a lot of different ways we can prevent them. Some of them are pretty obvious. Of course, you guys know safety glasses. Always make sure you wear eye protection. Wear gloves whenever it's necessary. Of course, there's a lot of things that can be hot on a vehicle, exhaust manifolds, things like that. You know, having a nice insulated pair of gloves, it's good for getting your hand in places where it might be hot. You don't want to risk getting burned. Also, wearing steel-toed shoes or boots. Those are going to be really helpful in preventing injury to your foot. A lot of times you could be handling something pretty heavy, something heavy like a brake rotor or a brake caliper, and you drop it on your foot. You know, if you have a steel-toe shoe, it's always going to be helpful to prevent injury. I've seen guys get hurt because, you know, they were wearing just regular tennis shoes. I've seen guys working in sandals. Believe me when I tell you, I've seen all kinds of stuff. Next up is something that I think gets overlooked, and that's wearing a mask. Anytime you're dealing with chemicals, you know, you want to make sure you're not breathing them in. Also, if you're like cutting brake rotors or something like that, you know, there's dust particles that are floating in the air. You don't want to breathe any of that stuff in. I remember back in the day when I was working at a shop where I used to cut a lot of brake rotors. You know, I'd spend a lot of time at the brake lathe, and when I get home, I would blow my nose and it would be all black. Those type of things are definitely things that you want to avoid. We work with a lot of different chemicals, and a lot of that stuff, you just don't want to breathe it in. Also, another tip is to be aware of your surroundings. Of course, make sure that you got your peripheral vision and you're looking around you. You want to make sure that you know where things are in relation to other things. You don't want to be bumping into things. I can't tell you how many times I've had a vehicle up on the lift and I'm walking underneath the vehicle and I bump my head on the arm of the lift. I mean, it happened to me one time so hard that it almost knocked me unconscious, and I had to sit down for a while because after that, I was just out of it. And I'm pretty sure you guys know what I'm talking about. Again, if you've been in this industry long enough, you can probably relate to what I'm saying. Now that we've talked about how we can prevent injury, I want to talk about something else that happens, especially for guys who have been in this industry a long time. You'll know what I'm talking about, and that is slacking. Ask any mechanic who's been doing this long enough, or just walk into a shop. Walk into a shop and count how many technicians actually have their safety or personal protective equipment on. I can tell you right now, a good percentage of them are not wearing safety glasses. Now, I'm not just gonna sit here and talk about this without admitting to you guys, yes, I am guilty of slacking. I am big time guilty of slacking. I'll be the first one here to admit it. By the way, if any of you guys wanna join in on admitting that you slack when it comes to wearing your safety equipment, comment down below, let me know so I don't feel like the only one here. Now, another thing I wanna talk about besides slacking is the improper use of tools. I know a lot of you guys are guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. I'm pretty sure if you ask any mechanic who's been doing this for any length of time, they've used a tool improperly to get the job done. Sometimes because they didn't have another method or another means to do it, and other times was because it was the faster or easier way to do it. And in the story I'm about to tell you, that's exactly what happened. Now, before I tell you guys a story about what happened to me a few days ago, I want to preface this by saying I wasn't on my normal working hours. I was actually helping a friend do the lower ball joints on his F-150 pickup truck. This is a 2008 Ford F-150 two-wheel drive, and he was replacing the 2 upper control arms and the 2 lower ball joints. So I decided to go over there and help him out. You know, he didn't really know what he was doing, but he was willing to put the work in. So, you know, I figured I could take him step by step so he could learn how to do it. Of course, anytime you're helping somebody do something for the first time, you end up doing a lot of it yourself. So that's kind of what happened, is that I spent most of my time doing one side so that he can then take what he learned from that one side and do the other side by himself. With that being said, let me explain to you guys what happened. So we were working on the truck and we had everything taken apart. We had removed the upper control arm, we had removed the steering knuckle, and it came time for us to remove the lower ball joint. Now, if you guys are familiar with Fords, especially this particular model, but it's kind of the same with a lot of the different Fords in this era, the lower ball joint is actually pressed in from the bottom up. So when the ball joint gets pressed into the control arm, it goes from the bottom up into the control arm, and there's a snap ring that goes at the top. So in order to remove the ball joint, first of all, you got to take off the snap ring on the top, and then you're supposed to use a press out tool to press the lower ball joint out. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with the ball joint press tool. Looks like a big C-clamp with a big screw going through the center of it. Yeah, that's the proper tool to use when you're doing this job. And I will tell you guys, I do own the tool. I own a couple of them actually, and I own several different pieces and adapters that go to the tool. But I'm gonna be honest with you guys, a lot of times with these lower ball joints on these Fords, I find it much easier and much quicker to use a different tool. Some of you guys might be familiar with it. It's called the BFH. And if you guys don't know what that is, let me show you real quick. This right here is a BFH. If you guys don't know what that stands for, look it up. Anyways, what I like to do with these Ford lower ball joints, and I've been doing it for years, and I'm not saying this is the right way to do it. This is totally not the right way to do it. This just happens to be the quickest way to do it for me. And I've done it before without having any problems. In this case, I did something a little bit different that led to me having an injury, but we'll get to that in a second. Anyway, so I used the BFH to pound the ball joint out of the lower control arm. Of course, I put a jack to support the lower control arm and a jack stand. That keeps the lower control arm from moving up and down. And you can just use the BFH to pound the lower ball joint out, and it should just come right out. Now, the only thing about using the BFH to beat out the lower ball joint is that you have to be careful to not hit the ball joint on the outer edge. You want to make sure that when you hit the ball joint with the hammer, you're hitting it right in the center. If you're not hitting it in the center and you hit it on the edge, what you're going to do is you're going to end up creating a lip on that ball joint. And what that lip is going to do is it's not going to allow the ball joint to come out of the control arm. So you'll beat it down to a certain point, but at a certain point, it's not going to go any further. And that's exactly what I did. Like I said, I've done this hundreds of times before, and I'm pretty good about hitting it right in the center. I mean, I've got a good aim and a good arm, so I can usually get it right in the center of the ball joint. But in this case, I gave it a good whack, and I ended up kind of creating a little bit of a lip. And so at that point, I was kind of forced to have to bust out the C-clamp for the ball joint. And so I went to go grab the tool. But before I actually set up the tool on the lower control arm to press out the lower ball joint, I figured I'd give it one more try. Because if you guys have ever used that C-clamp tool, I mean, yeah, it works, but sometimes it could be a little bit frustrating trying to assemble the cups, the receiver cup, and the part that's going to press it down. You know, you got to mess with the different sizes and try to figure out what works and what doesn't. So anyways, I figured I'd give it one more shot, a quick Hail Mary pass. So I dug into the back of my toolbox and I found an old socket set. It was an old Craftsman socket set that I had bought like 10 years ago or something like that. And I rarely ever used it because, you know, I had some other lug nut sockets, and that's what these were. They were impact sockets for lug nuts, and I found a 7/8 socket, and I used it because, you know, it was smaller than the ball joint. So you want to be able to hit in the center of the ball joint. So what my plan was is I put the socket on top of the ball joint and hit the socket with the hammer. So I had the socket on the ball joint, and I was hammering away at it with the BFH, and I was kind of squatting down, hammering away at this thing. And probably the fourth or fifth time I went to whack that socket, a piece of it actually chipped off. And when I say a piece of it chipped off, I mean, guys, I hit it so hard that when that piece chipped off of the socket, it actually shot off like a bullet and it went into my leg. Now, initially, I didn't realize what happened. I felt something hit my calf or my leg, and I looked down, and guys, I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, there was blood squirting out of my calf. I mean, it looked like something out of a horror movie. The blood was just gushing out and it was running down my leg. And I freaked out. I was scared because I thought I was gonna bleed out in the driveway. So I hurried up and I grabbed a bunch of shop rags and I covered the hole in my leg, and I was just holding pressure on there Of course, I had to go to the emergency room. I pretty much spent the night in the emergency room. They took x-rays there, and they also did a CAT scan where they put some dye into my veins and arteries so that they could see where the piece was, because they attempted to pull it out, but I guess the piece went so deep into my leg that they weren't actually able to extract it in the ER. This is a socket that I was using. It's a 7/8 Craftsman impact socket, and I'm not really sure what type of metal this is, but if you look on the top edge over here, you can see where part of this socket actually chipped off when I hit it with the hammer, and now that piece of this socket is inside of my leg. So anyways, after spending the night at the ER, I had to go visit a surgeon because like I said, at the ER, they attempted to try to get the piece out because it was actually stuck in my leg. But you know, they numbed the area around my leg, around the hole, and they used some forceps and they tried to dig it out. And I mean, the doctor was digging way into my leg trying to get the piece out, but no luck. He wasn't able to get it out. So he said that, you know, I'm gonna have to go to see a surgeon. Then the surgeon is gonna decide whether or not he wants to leave the piece in there, or whether or not it's worth having surgery for them to cut my leg open and get the piece out. So anyways, the following day, I met up with the surgeon. He took a look at it and he said that, you know, he wanted to wait a couple weeks or so before deciding whether or not to remove it surgically. You know, he told me people live with bullets in their body all the time. And I'll tell you guys right now, I'm no stranger to having foreign objects inside my body. I actually have a pellet in my forearm here that's been there for about 18 years now. So I guess having another piece of foreign material inside my body is not such a big deal. So at this point, I'm pretty much just waiting now. A lot of the swelling has gone down. They put me on some antibiotics. They put me on some pain medication. So, you know, I'm managing with it right now. Hopefully I'm going to be able to heal. It looks pretty optimistic. You know, I'm pretty optimistic at least that, you know, this thing's going to heal up and I'm not going to have surgery to remove it, because of course, if I have to have surgery, then they're going to have to cut it open and it's going to, you know, leave me with more downtime. I'm already behind with my work. I'm trying to catch up with my schedule here, and this injury has only put me behind. Like I said, I'm no stranger to injuries. I actually had an incident about 5 or 6 years ago where I had a piece of metal stuck in my finger, and that actually happened also while I was doing some ball joints. And this time I was actually using the tool. The only problem is that I was using a tool that had some damaged threads on the screw that goes through the C-clamp. And as I was guiding the screw into the ball joint, a piece of the damaged thread actually went into my finger. Now that one, they were able to pull it out, but I do still have an x-ray. I'm gonna put that up on the screen to show you guys because I think it's actually pretty cool. Anyways, like I said, injury is a big part of our industry. It happens a lot. And in my case, yes, it really could have been prevented had I been using the proper tools and not misusing other tools. Because, you know, guys, impact sockets, you're not meant to hit them with a hammer. They're meant to be used on an impact gun. So in this case, yes, it was my fault. Again, like I said, I'll be the first one to admit that I'm guilty of slacking. I'm also guilty of misusing tools or using them improperly. Now, after this incident, you know, I think I'm gonna be a little more careful in the future. Sometimes you just need something to remind you, some type of wake-up call to remind you guys that yes, you are mortal, you are not invincible. And I guess that's really my purpose in making this video, is to remind you guys, please practice safe mechanicking, always wear your safety equipment, always be aware of your surroundings, and never misuse or improperly use a tool. With that being said, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it informational. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.